Chapter 3: Why Truth is More Valuable Than We Realize. So there's a recap from the last chapter, which is really great because, I took a few days off and now I'm jumping back right in. And what's great about this is that it recaps everything. And for someone who is doing a slow read and who, is taking their time with this book, it's really nice to have a nice summary in the beginning of this chapter. Quick recap. Now, make good judgments. So there is an underlying kind of theme with Soldier Mindset. With Soldier Mindset, the motivations for protecting your views come to emotional benefits and social benefits, which was discussed last chapter. This chapter, when we talk about Scout Mindset, there's only one real motivation behind it. It's not for emotional benefits, not for social benefits. It's simply to make good judgment calls. That's like what I said in the very beginning in my introduction. That's what I'm here for, to understand how to make good judgment calls, how to take information, to use it to my advantage, and to know when to leave things, behind. Now, speaking of which, just the other night, there was someone who left a comment, and it was feedback, mentioning that with these YouTube videos, audio videos, I guess, that I'm putting out there, that my voice sounded a bit dry, and it sounded dry and boring. And there's two ways I could take it. I can be like, okay, well, this person, he's a hater. And, to be fair, I kind of did, remove his comment because I felt like it just had a very kind of bad energy to it. But on the flip side, I'm also very thankful for it because he does have a point. When I listen to my videos, my audio, like, I notice that sometimes I might ramble a little bit. I'm kind of doing it a little bit now. It's my style. I don't really apologize too much for it, but I do know I could probably get to the point a lot faster, and I can probably color my voice a little bit more so it doesn't sound so dry. Now, for me, the main dilemma is, okay, so how much of this comment do I take to heart, and how much do I ignore? That's where good judgment calls are all for. It's about taking information and being like, okay, this is feedback. It might not be feedback that is great, but that's okay. That's fine. How do I use that? What do I take out of it? And should I take it to one extreme or the other? Should I, really, really go all in and listen? Or should I just take bits and pieces? And I honestly feel like a lot of it has to deal with something that my friend told me. He said the truth is neither one extreme or the other. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle. It's usually somewhere in the middle. And so being able to compromise with that, and being like, okay, maybe I could up the ante, maybe I can add a little bit more kind of color, that's totally fine. Enjoy myself a little bit more, so that the audience, whoever's listening, can also enjoy. But also at the same time, I don't have to go all out, or I don't have to take it to a very extreme, to the point where I'm either discouraged and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't make videos anymore, so I'll just stop. Or, okay, now I'm really gonna go 100%. I'm raising the bar a little bit to see how it is, and we'll experiment. We'll gauge how things kind of go. And if the person who did comment earlier, if he happens to, be watching this or hearing this, then great. That's awesome. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But, let's not put any negative energy out there. If you do, I do have to, remove it. But I'd be happy to talk to you. So, we'll say that. Okay, so, making good judgment calls. That's very important. And that's a good example. So, moving forward. This next part talks about trade-off, wherein there is a trade-off between having good judgment and also having morale. And this is something that I was actually getting at earlier in my other videos. There's this idea that if you do face the truth earlier on, it might destroy your morale and it might make you stop. But if you're able to stomach it, then that's the best case scenario, because then you can end up fixing whatever you did wrong and you can make better judgment calls. You can stop deceiving yourself. There is a point in this area of the chapter where she mentions that, there we go, that if you are conscious and you say, should I admit that I screwed up, then this issue is already moot. Usually you're unconsciously using our scout mindset or soldier mindset. So what's interesting is she mentions that there is kind of a battle even with herself when she's asking for feedback. But when she asks for feedback, she nods and probably makes the intonation of her voice a little bit higher, as if to subconsciously tell the person, the answer is yes, you should say yes. And that's, in a weird way, that is, a bit of soldier mindset. You're asking somebody's opinion, but you're letting them know this is the right answer, this is what you need to say. And that really doesn't give you proper feedback. So it's very interesting. Especially the more proud somebody is, I think, the more they have reason to defend their case and to fight for themselves or defend themselves. Even for me, I can totally admit that I don't like hearing bad things about myself, for sure, But I also understand that sometimes hearing those things, they end up helping you more than hurting you. If you can really absorb it and understand why this feedback occurred, and then you can go about changing that. So, this next section is very interesting because it introduces a concept from Bryan Caplan, this idea of rational irrationality. And what's interesting about it is that there's two different types of rationality already out there. And she mentions this epistemic rationality, and then we have instrumental rationality. So epistemic rationality is being able to believe in something that's well justified. Instrumental rationality is using rationale to your advantage, so it's instrumental to how you want to effectively achieve your goals. So instrumental rationality, and then there's epistemic rationality. And now the idea of being rationally irrational is this idea that you kind of are able to understand a really good balance between having a scout mindset and having a little bit of soldier mindset. Again, last section was talking about trade-offs, morale versus understanding the true truth, In this section, it's about, well, what if you have a perfect balance already? What if you are CEO and you're not going to delude yourself to the point where you're going to go bankrupt. So there's probably a limit to where your soldier mindset will give way. and you will be like, okay, well, based on this data, it's pretty evident that I'm failing, so let's turn the other way. So what Julia is mentioning is that there is a limit, and most people think that they've struck a good balance between scout mindset and soldier mindset. However, that's not what this book is about. It's not about fighting for a balance. It's about really, truly fighting for the idea that scout mindset is really, really important. And the fact that soldier mindset is really just, while it does have its place, and everything, we overvalue it. We overvalue it too much, and it's not, we should place more value, significantly, it seems from what she's saying, in Scout's mindset. That we're doing things unconsciously and it's hurting us. And we think that we're doing well, but it really isn't helping us. It's not really going to our advantage. Again, this argument is, being put forth pretty strongly. It is a bit extreme, but I do want to see where it goes. I do agree that there is a balance, and I do believe that sometimes you need scout mentality, and sometimes you do need soldier mentality. Although giving way completely, will it really be that much more beneficial? Or is it more like, I have to take the bullet now, but it's gonna be totally worth it later? I'm thinking that's probably the logical kind of progression that this is going to make. One little tidbit that I found really funny, kind of cool, was that she mentions, she kind of builds it up and says like now I could appeal to your to people by saying A, B, and C. So for instance, like, you should choose Scout Mindset because you'd be a better person. You should choose Scout Mindset because knowing the truth is awesome. But she goes beyond that, and then she says, well, kind of spoiler alert, but you could probably guess by the title of the book, but I'm not going to just do that. I'm going to actually push for it. So, again, this is a deep analysis. I'm putting my thoughts out there as I read it. So, yeah, let's see where this goes. I'm kind of curious. What is your argument, and what will you make of it? So, the beginning of this section talks about how people will start something right away, like a gym membership or whatnot. Because at the present moment, it sounds like a great idea. But after time passes, and, it's 5 days later, the present you in the future doesn't like the idea anymore. Or something came up and your interests have changed, they fluctuated. And this is the idea of present bias. This idea of present bias kind of making its way to... It shows there is a hole in one's thinking when they use soldier mindset. Soldier mindset is preoccupied with what happens right away, instant gratification. Likewise. But the thing about it is that, just like with a lot of things, when we have instant gratification now, it might come back to bite us in the butt later. It could be a month from now, 2 months from now. And soldier mindset, she's making a connection that soldier mindset is connected to this. So this is where I had to pause and reread a bit of this section so I could try to connect something. And this is something that I'm having trouble seeing personally, is the connection between soldier mindset and present bias. I'm going to read forward. I'm going to read a little bit forward to see if there is a connection that is established. But at this point, the main question in my head is, well, okay, so we've established what present bias is. There is a mention that soldier mindset is related to present bias. That connection hasn't been made clear yet. So if I were to take this information and believe it right off the bat, then there would be no strong basis to kind of lay it on. But I'm going to read it a little bit further because I know I'm not done with the section yet. And let's see if there is a connection that's made. So I'll be right back. Okay, so for the last 3 paragraphs, I've been able to create an association with this whole present bias and soldier mindset. So with soldier mindset, apparently, it's all about morale. It's all about like, okay, yeah, you can do this. You have a high chance of success. You're going to be able to, you're going to be able to do this. So when you come up with an idea and you're like, okay, well, I'll go every day to the gym, you're kind of overestimating your ability, I guess. And that's where scout mindset kind of will benefit you, is if you're like, wait a second, well, I know that I can probably do this for 3 days, but then my motivation will die off, some stuff will probably happen, and what's funny is that people who are over, confident that they're going to follow the book completely 100%, and nothing's going to ever happen to them, nothing bad's going to derail their ideas, that's where the delusion sets in. And that's why people sometimes, they start things and they're like, this is a great idea, I'm going to do it, but then later in the future they realize, oh shoot, well, this is a lot harder than I thought. For example, even making these audio videos, what's interesting is that the first day I was able to put up the video, it was relatively easy. I was experimenting with an app that makes things go faster, and it was a paid program, and I was debating whether or not I should really use it. Maybe there was an alternative that I could use. And then in the very end, I realized, because I tried reading the next day and then putting it up, I realized that, gosh, it takes an exorbitant amount of time to actually do this on my own, or to use alternative programs. The program that I had used initially was the best one. And when I found that out, I was like, okay, well, I will pay the extra money so that this service can help me. But that took 2 days. This is where it comes back. It took 2 days for me to get to that point, because I was struggling for 2 days. Prior to that, in my first video, I said I'm going to plan on uploading every day. This is going to be fine. Obviously, it was easy for me to do it this time. I should be able to do it, daily, because I have, some extra time, because I'm not meeting up with my best friend as much, so I can use this time. And within 1 hour or so, I should be able to do this on a daily basis. Well, it was good in theory, but there were things that I had to overcome. There were way more things that made it not as easy as I thought. So maybe it'll come to the point where, now that I've understood that and I'm doing what I'm doing, maybe I can do this every day. But I can see the benefit of being like, okay, this sounds great, but let's not set myself up, right? It's probably a lot more difficult than what it appears to be. There might be other comments out there, people hating on me or being like, oh, you ramble too much, you didn't get to the point, fast enough. And sure, I mean, that's why this is a video. You can skip a little bit forward if you want to, or if you want to hear, if you don't even want to hear what I have to say and you don't like my pacing or anything, then feel free to, not watch at all. Um, Also, on top of that, I do feel that, as I start to read this book and understand judgment calls, making good judgment calls, I think it's important for me to obviously make good judgment calls in terms of me evolving this. By the end of the podcast, this might be radically different. You'll notice that on my other two videos, I started incorporating effects, video effects, audio effects, a bit of an echo. Perhaps the echo is too much, and that's also something that might detract. So somebody please tell me if that's something that bothers you. But anyways, though, it's a learning process, and these first videos, they may be rants, for sure. And maybe I'm going into soldier mindset because, I'm protecting my integrity. I'm making a reason, I'm talking about myself, defending myself. All the same, though, that's what makes this book so interesting, is that it can be very meta, because YouTube is all about, putting something out there, engaging how your audience reacts, and to be able to use the knowledge or the information in this book to actually help the process of making videos about this book, it's a great idea, and I do intend to get better. So excuse me if I may be going on rants. Excuse me if, I'm in this developmental stage at this moment. But at the same time, I'm documenting my journey. And hopefully these thoughts, again, can help other people so that they can learn, hopefully, from my mistakes. And hopefully my thoughts and my ideas can help somebody with what they're doing. So, do I apologize if I'm a bit boring or I need that development? No, because again, you're not forced to listen to this, and at the same time, what am I doing this for? I'm doing this for an analysis to understand a book, to incorporate my own real life kind of experiences, to mix with these ideas to really find out what is the truth. How does this help me? How can I assimilate these ideas, and from an anecdotal point of view, do these things make sense to me? Can I resonate with it? And in the end, how do I make better judgment? So Judgment Call tells me right now to keep reading. This is wonderful. I really like this idea. In the next section, we underestimate the value of building scout habits. Julia makes a comparison with the gym. If you miss one day, you might be like, oh, okay, well, whatever, I can just do it tomorrow. That's not the problem. People might think like, oh yeah, I can just do it tomorrow. But the problem is that you're forming a habit. If you can do it tomorrow, then tomorrow comes, you might be forming the habit of being like, well, I can do it tomorrow again. And then that's what ends up, messing things up. And it's interesting because she compares that to how mindsets work, and scout mindset. There's this very important word, and it's not, scout is one of them, but mindset is the important word, because it really comes down to what mindset is. And this is something that me and my best friend were talking about earlier. This idea of mindset. And keep up the mindset is something that we would say a lot to each other. And what is mindset? What is it? What is it exactly? Mindset is how you see the world. And that's super important. And if your mindset is flawed in any way, as in it's doing things that you don't want it to do for you, so it is being instrumental in a way, instrumental mentality, instrumental mindset. Um, what ends up happening is that it doesn't serve you in the end. And a scout mindset, as with any mindset, is supposed to serve you the best way possible. That's what mindsets are for. That's why we cultivate mindsets. That's why, when you're aware of what a mindset is and you try to develop it, you want to create the optimal mindset so that when you live your life, you can really get the most out of it by the time you're gone. And that's what I think anyway. And so there's this idea of when you get into the habit of scout mindset, then you start saying things like, oh, I didn't think about that before. Or, oh, yeah, I guess I'm wrong. This is integral in what I call relationships, deep relationships, if you have a significant other. For me, I married my wife it's almost 3 years, so we're still kind of a baby couple, 2 years and a few months. And what's interesting is we used to fight all the time. And there came a point where I realized that sometimes I would fight just for the sake of pride. And that bothered me. I didn't like that. Because I knew intrinsically that I was wrong, but I would end up desperately grasping at straws in order to prove my point. And at that point, it was kind of a moot point. So I started to kind of concede and be like, okay, well, no, that makes sense. And what's funny is that sometimes the more that I did that, the more my partner would actually be like, oh, okay, well, you had a good point too, actually. And then we'd come to an agreement. And it was the most interesting thing. When I conceded, it actually, you think you lose power because you're conceding. But what's funny is that, and you believe that the person you concede to won't listen to you. But what's funny is that when you concede to another person, and this might not happen in all cases, some people might just take it and be like, ha ha ha. But from my understanding, and also I attribute it to the partner that I've chosen, she is the best, literally, as a wife and as a partner in crime, I couldn't have asked for anything better. Maybe you should challenge that. Well, there are some things that you don't want to challenge, but okay, like that's what an interesting kind of random thought here, tangent. But no, like for me, there's a point where it's like, no, like she is the best, and she might not be the best in just, it's still objective because she might not be the best in certain aspects, but she is the best in knowing who I am. I spent the most time with her, and she's the best in being the right person for me. So anyway, this helped with my relationship, and it was, funny enough, it gave me more of a point of, it helped with my persuasion, it helped with me being able to get her on my side with a few things, not everything, but she could see things from my point of view. And there was more trust involved because I was allowing myself to be vulnerable, and she saw that. And she respected the fact that I had conceded to what she said, and there is mutual respect between us. There's this mutual respect between, okay, I respect your ideas. I know you're an intelligent person, and I acknowledge that, and it worked vice versa. So it ended up being great. So, yes, I know this is going on a tangent, but hopefully, again, maybe I'll get better at getting to the point, as well as being able to make strong cases for this. So, yeah, I'm aware I'm in a developmental stage. But let's stop talking about me being in a developmental stage, and let's move forward. So this next section is about the ripple effect of self-deception. This is great. She goes into depth about how when we tell one lie, you usually need to tell more lies in order to cover up for the first lie. And I was just talking about me and my wife earlier, and I think it's funny that the progressional section, subsequent section, talks just about that, a husband and a wife. I found that very interesting. But anyhow, the interesting thing about the ripple effect that I find very interesting that she points out is that when you try to explain your misdeeds, or you explain away the bad things that you've committed, then you'll look at other people and you're going to judge them very harshly, because you'll be like, well, why aren't they as good as me? Why are they screwing up all the time? And that has an effect on your relationships, obviously. Especially if you're perfect and nobody else can be perfect, then that's going to affect your relationships. That's one thing. Second thing is that when you think you're so good, there's more than just a pride effect going on. What you start believing from people will be very skewed. Because, for instance, you think you're the shit, right? You're so amazing. And then you go on YouTube and you watch people say, oh, well, girls aren't really that shallow. Well, if you're the shit and girls aren't shallow, and if for some reason you're not popular with the girls, what does that mean? Probably means that this commentator and people who are talking about these facts, they're probably wrong. So you're going to dismiss that person, probably not just that person, but anything that person says, And then so when it comes to information, you're only taking in information that serves you. So because you do that, you're skewing so many things. You're skewing the type of information that you're getting, how you're processing it, and also you're skewing it's almost like science. It's almost like math. In math, if something happens in one equation, you have to, in order to make things equal, it has to balance out. When you start deceiving yourself, it's like you're doing a calculus problem, but you got it wrong from the very beginning. There's one little thing, one little mess up, and things just they never add up. Nothing adds up. They're all skewed. Everything's skewed. Things don't even make sense anymore because you think it's one way, but it's completely different. And that's the problem with skewing your mindset to work in your favor, is that other things that might not even seem remotely related, they end up not making sense to you because they just don't equate. They just don't add up. So, that can be on a very huge level, this ripple effect. And one thing that is interesting is that once you do find the truth, and I know this with me and my wife as well, as soon as we understand the truth about something, everything seems to fall into place. Everything seems to fall into place. Like, oh, it's because on the schedule yesterday, you actually put it for Monday, not Tuesday. Ah, it all makes sense now. Got it. Stuff like that. When you find the truth to things, things just start making sense. It's easier to understand people, why they are the way they are, how you need to be in order to interact with them more cordially. You know, this affects, this does end up helping affect you socially in the long run, I guess. So that's good point. Anything I would like to contend about this? No, I do believe in butterfly effects. I believe in ripple effects, and I believe that it definitely is a good point. The other kind of argument, a good argument to probably make is, well, what are the ripple effects of not having soldier mindset? We're looking at it one way, but how about the other way? So let's take out soldier mindset. For example, I have a firm belief that, for me, there are some stipulations, I guess, but I'm dedicated to my wife, and to me, she is the best for me, and I'm holding on to that, right? If I challenge that, and I'm like, oh, well, there is another person out there, and they're more of what I want, they serve more of my purpose, should I end my relationship with my wife and go to somebody else? No. For me, there's that, like, regardless of who the prospect is, it doesn't matter, because I've closed myself off from that. There are things that I do believe you have to stand your ground on. But I mean, again, it's more rooted than just that. It's not just, oh, I'm going to, be faithful. It's also this idea of, there are social consequences, obviously. There are, benefits to staying together versus divorcing. There's all these other kinds of, reasons why I should, be faithful, be committed, give her 100%, There's so many things that I can say about this, and I'm probably also setting myself up for being challenged in a weird way. But I do think that if you are lax with certain things, you are able to be influenced in a bad way. I feel like you do have to challenge. Yeah, you do have to challenge. Scrutinize new ideas. But yeah. The next section says we overestimate social costs. And this is basically, it spans from a doctor appointment all the way to someone who is unwilling to get out of a life and death situation because of their pride. And in all cases, well, there's this idea of we're afraid of looking bad, embarrassed. So because of that, we tend to deceive ourselves, or we tend to lie. With the doctor, the idea of you don't tell the doctor what's really going on, which can lead to your death. 81% and 61% of patients respectively admit to withholding information from their doctor about important things, like whether they're taking their medication every day, stuff like that. What's the doctor going to do? Do you really want to feel bad in front of your doctor, or do you really want to die instead? And sometimes it's a horrible trade-off we literally make when we when we do that. When we try to look good, but it costs us. So socially, yeah, you look good in front of other people. But what if you die because of that? You're gonna die because you want to keep up an image that's not even real. So that's super important. Now I know that Scout soldier mindset is all about defending yourself and making yourself look good in front of other people, and that is a good thing. But when it comes at this kind of cost, it's undeniable that, of course, that's foolish. It's very foolish. So we get back to the idea of, okay, what's wrong with striking a balance though? Because you can still, benefit from saving face, having a good reputation, having a healthy reputation out there, you know, correcting yourself when you mess up is part of that image, right? So, in the end, if you correct yourself, or if you do what you actually, sorry, there is an interesting idea that comes to me, is that isn't scout mindset, couldn't it be instrumental in the very end for soldier mindset? Because in soldier mindset, you're preoccupied with your image, or you're preoccupied with defending yourself. You could use scout mindset knowingly and being like, well, hey, I know that if I'm a open-minded person, that this is what is communicated to people, that I'm open-minded and I'm willing to listen to what it is that they're trying to tell me. Isn't that also defending who you are? Isn't that also defending your pride as a person? Because you're saying, look at me, this is how I am. And I want to defend that. I want to defend the fact that I'm open. So, in a way, isn't soldier mindset and scout mindset, can't they kind of be nested within each other? Isn't it kind of also this very can't they work with each other? I mean, here's a question: when you're at war with something, maybe it's not one side or the other. Maybe you can actually work together. And that's what I'm thinking, is that there's a little bit of overlap here. Or you can even posit that, scout mindset can even be a subset of, taking in this idea of scout mindset can also be used, right? To, for the sake of giving yourself a bigger ego, making yourself believe that you are something, right? Like, I'm very open-minded. I've got scout mindset. So I don't know. It's very interesting to me. Anyhow, though, moving forward. So she does mention here in this last part of the section that since we're tempted by immediate payoffs, that we do make poor judgment calls when we're trying to weigh decisions, and when we use the soldier mindset, that it's all about the immediate payoffs, like, again, makes you feel good and such. What's interesting is that she does mention at the very end, it doesn't mean that scout mindset is always the better choice, but it does mean we have a bias in favor of the soldier, even when the scout is a better choice. So that is interesting. So maybe in the end, this isn't really about eliminating the soldier, right? Like, I'm getting that kind of feel. But still, at the same time, she's pushing towards, we need to start skewing things to make it so that we're more scout-minded oriented. So I can respect that. I can respect that bit of the middle ground. So, okay, cool. the next section is an accurate map is more useful now. It talks about how a long time ago in the caveman days, there weren't really that many options. You're very limited. But nowadays, possibilities are limitless, especially if you live in a developed country. I can agree with that 100%. If you're bad at something, you can figure out how to get better at it. If I need to get to the point more, I can learn how to do that, or I can work on it. I'm not stuck in a religion. I'm not stuck doing something for the rest of my life. I have the ability to choose. And when you do have the ability to choose, you have the... You need to have better judgment in order to really capitalize on what you're getting yourself into and how you're going to live your life. That is definitely 100% true. And that's why I wanted to go and read this book in the first place, is because, again, I wanted to know how do I make better judgment. And part of that is developing your mindset. What's interesting is, I'll quote the book. She says, whether your choices make your life better or worse depends on your judgment. And your judgment depends on your mindset. So scout mindset, again, would be the superior mindset in order to base off of making decisions. So, that's that. Any counter arguments? Anything that I can say about this? Any thoughts? Obviously, I do believe that now things are much more varied. People have way more choices. Is it a scout's world right now? I would say that if you adopt the scout mindset, it can really benefit you. Opposed to people who lived in the cave days and people who still have the same brains, right? And still think instinctively about soldier mindset. So basically, this is a more evolved way of thinking because you're more aware. You're more aware of the decisions that you can be making, and you can make do with it what you wish. Any decision. Anything. And our lives are full of decisions that we have to make every single day. This is a pretty solid argument. The only thing that I guess you can argue it with is allowing yourself to have more options, is that really the best thing to do in life? And the reason why I put that out there is that you can be so spread out that you end up not really accomplishing anything. Sometimes having a direct path is viable. Sometimes it's good to limit yourself, because if you really unlimit yourself, the amount of the amount of unlimitedness could end up also being bad for you. Even so though, when it comes to judgment, I feel like there's a sweet spot. I feel like there are a lot of opportunities out there in the world right now. There's so many things you can do, and I think it's important to be able to be aware of one's opportunities so you can actually choose. I feel like at the same time that if you scout around too much and all you do is explore and all you do is like look around at what's possible, if you do that too much and you don't commit to something, you might be wandering for the rest of your life, or you might not really get into the thing that would have really given you the greatest payoff. Then again though, I totally agree that with scout mindset, you can identify what that is. So again, I like the idea of having scout mindset and soldier mindset work together. So use scout mindset to search, to explore, see what's out there. When you find something that you really want to lock into, then go ahead and give it a shot. But also be open-minded to the point where, well, if it doesn't end up working out, then okay, maybe that's not the thing. Be open to the possibility that you can change. Um, and this can also work for relationships as well. Like, definitely. For me, I'm already committed. And I feel committed. Uh, Julia does mention something about there was somebody who had an interview. This was a New Zealander, and she changed her mind because she was like, "Oh, I'm not really. The aspect of ambition doesn't really thrill me." But then 2 years later, she's like, "Oh, actually, you know what? Well, maybe, actually worked out better for me." So it's interesting. So in that case, if I found out, for example, that my wife was a serial killer or whatever, of course, like there might be information that comes to me in the future that, of course, it's not like I'm completely 100% rock solid. Although I feel like I am, but then again, that's the interesting thing about it, right? When you actually challenge your beliefs and you're like, okay, well, do you really believe that? Sometimes it can fortify it, right? And then sometimes, it can really make you question, like, well, is this the best thing? And maybe it's not. But again, there is, I feel, a sweet spot where you have to realize, like, it's not good to jump around too much, but at the same time, it's not good to be completely set 100% with no stipulations whatsoever. So I believe there is that sweet spot. So, anyways, that's the end of this chapter. I hope you guys have enjoyed this audio recording. I do want to, you know, shout out again. Thank you to the person who commented earlier. Um, I'm trying new things, and I will try to be a little bit more direct. I'm catching myself as I start to talk a little bit longer. So I'm gonna work on that, and then I'm also gonna try to see if I can color things up a little bit more, have my voice a little bit more, I don't know, have more energy maybe, or just like be more, yeah, be a little bit more spicy. Not spicy, that's the wrong word, but delectable. So it's not like you're eating a plain hamburger from a cheap hamburger store. You're getting a nice, juicy, kind of like really good um, thing with this. So it's in the works, and I don't want to apologize, but I do want to thank you, whoever is listening, who is who has to bear with this developmental process. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. With that said, um, we'll wrap it up for today. This has been another cool kind of in-depth book analysis. Have a good one, and till next time.